everybody. I'm going to talk a little bit about my thesis. I'm going to say the most important things because obviously it could be a little bit difficult to understand these kind of topics. As you already know, I am a lawyer. I study in the University of Yucatan in the law school. I did my master's degree in history. So this allows me to do this, I guess, or I am doing this good interpretation between anthropology and law. The difference between working just with anthropology or working just with law is that in anthropology what is most important is to understand what is happening in social practices. No? And in law, what is most important is to analyzing these legal systems, depending what legal systems are. But what I'm trying to do with this thesis is mixing both disciplines. So let me tell you a little bit about this. So what we have here is this, the name of my thesis, Mayan Justice, a study of the Mayan Justice Act of 2014 in 3 municipalities in Western Yucatan. Act is a synonym of, we can say, of law. No? In this case, I am talking about an state law, about Mayan justice. So before I start with this, I want to explain you this right for indigenous people is already in Mexico considered as a human right. This human right for doing justice by themselves, by their own customs, by the constitutional law. So as you also know, what is the most difficult thing about human rights is to become them real. No? We know that in Mexico there are excellent rules, excellent laws, the Constitution looks perfect, but the problem is how we are going to do effective these laws. No? But I am talking about that this specific law, this specific human right of indigenous people is considered as a third generation human right because it comes from cultural rights, no, and social rights. So let's start with my hypothesis. The Mayan Justice Act of 2014 grants fewer rights to the Mayan people than superior jurisdictions, precedents, and therefore does not represent an advance in the application of Mayan justice. This situation I'm going to explain you why after, because we're going to see what the Constitution says about this. No? But this is my main objective, to analyze the Mayan Justice Act of 2014 and its application, relevance and coherence in 3 municipalities in the western region of the state of Yucatan. Of course, there are other sub-roles that comes from, obviously, the anthropology. It's not just important to me analyzing what this human right represents and how it's being applied through this act, the 2014 Act of Yucatan. But it's also important to analyze what is happening in the practices. No? How is this Mayan justice? What are the practices of this justice? If is it efficient or not efficient? What is society in these municipalities thinking about? So, but this is the main goal. No? One very important subject of this thesis is the Mayan Justice Act. No? So the methodology, as I told you before, is a methodology obviously qualitative. Of course, I can use, if it's necessary, some quantitative tools. For example, you know, INEGI, Mexico has good information, just to have these general ideas of this context that is important in every social thesis or every social research. But what I am using is this method called law anthropology or legal anthropological method, using different techniques, obviously. One of them is the legal analysis, definitely has to be there. Another one is the participant observation, the interviews, the life histories, and the archive research. The archive research is important because, you know, when you think in a social problem, you can not just think it in present. It's important to understand what was happening in the past. No? If this justice exists, what are the changes that has happened in this kind of justice? And that's why it's important to do the archive research, because what we want is to see the original documents and how, as an historian, Brenda knows, you need to do this interpretation of the documents, not just say exactly what they say, but you need to do this social interpretation. No? So talking about history, it's important to put in context what happened with Mayan justice, the archaeological studies, and also some documents from Spanish people that came at the beginning of the conquest, I guess. It has been demonstrated that exists a Mayan justice system since pre-Columbian times. So obviously with different situations, it's not the one we know now, but it has a criminal system with a judge. It was called the Batap in Maya, who did justice in their towns, no? And it has said also by some other authors that this system, this legal system, pre-Columbian legal system, was very cruel because most of the penalties were the death penalty, no, in different ways, no. But it's important also to know what happened during colonial times. No? During colonial times, what is very interesting is that the Spanish authorities recognized this right for indigenous people to do justice in their own towns. Obviously, that this right should not conflict with the Catholic religion or the Spanish law, no? The Spanish legal system. But it's interesting that it was recognized 100 years ago, no? More than 400 years ago. And it is interesting because when Mexico became an independent state, as you know, in 1821, it has to happen more than almost 200 years it had to pass in order to be recognized this right again. No, this right again was recognized until 1994, you know, because of different situations. We have the Zapatista movement, the Acuerdo de San Andrés, different things that put in the context this right. And other important things were that Mexico signed different international treaties, international laws, as the Convention 169, and also the United Nations Declarations of the Rights of Indigenous People of 2007. This is very important. Why? Because exactly 2 years ago, the Supreme Court of Mexico has already said by jurisprudence is considered a law in the same level as the law, that the international treaties that the Mexican state has signed should be considered as the same level as the Constitution, should be considered as important as the Constitution, if they include a human right. And these two international treaties that I am talking to you are recognize and establish this human right for indigenous people to self-determination. Another important change happened in 2011. The Mexican Constitution amendment recognized self-determination for indigenous people as a human right, and this represents a big change. It's not the same to be garantías individuales, the human rights. We're going to see why, no? Because as you know, the human rights are these very important rights that all humans have. It doesn't matter if they are from other nationality, their preferences, the ethnical group. It has to be, it's something that is inherent to the person, not to the human. And 3 years after, we have the Mayan Justice Act in Yucatan. That is a very important point for this business. So this is what the Mexican Constitution says. I'm not going to read it in order to, you don't get bored. But, what it says, no, exactly what it says. It recognizes this right, no, to indigenous people to self-determination in different ways, in elections, in economy, in politics. But what is important to me is exactly this part, no? Apply their own regulations and solve their own conflicts according to their own rules, okay? This is establishing that indigenous people can do justice according to their constitutional law, and obviously we can say that the law, or we can say that this should not conflict the own constitution, the Mexican Constitution, and obviously the integrity of women or other human rights. This is important to know why, because as you know, for example, in Chiapas or in Central America, in different places, exactly in Chiapas, we're talking about Mexico, no? Sometimes this justice in the communities could be a little bit cruel. For example, with, you know, I don't know the word in English, the linchamientos, no? As a penalty. But obviously, linchamientos are not allowed, no, in the Constitution, because these kind of situations goes against the right of life. No? So this right should not conflict other rights, other human rights. No? So the research area, for those that don't know where Yucatan is, it is in the state, not the whole peninsula. Here we have, well, you can see the most beautiful city in the world, maybe. And the three municipalities, let me show you where they are. They are almost here in the west of Yucatan. This is Machcanu, Cocomá, Opichen. These are the research area, the place where I am doing this ethnographic work, and doing the interviews, the observation, and seeing what is really happening, no, with this system, with this legal system, no. So for sure you are asking, or you are questioning yourself, why these municipalities, no? First of all, these municipalities, because they have a big percentage of Mayan speakers, and also because Mérida, you saw, is close to those municipalities, so they are, as I consider it, they are the best example to see how are these interactions between the constitutional law and the state law, the official law. I don't want to call it official because also constitutional law is official, as we saw. But here the percentage, for example, in the case of Copoma, we have that 44% of Mayan of people that speak Maya as their first language, not as a second one, as a first language. Also, we have Mashkanu with 40% and Opichen with 69%. So, as you see, it's important the people that speak Maya in this place, in these municipalities, in these towns. So that's why I consider to do the research in this area. No? Well, this is a Mayan judge. Obviously, I'm not going to put here the interview because it's in Spanish. But it's very interesting because this Mayan judge was telling me that they don't know anything about that act of 2014. Obviously, the act was made by Yucatecan congressmen. And obviously, like happens in different situations in Mexico, they didn't hear Mayan people for doing this. No, they did what they thought it was a trend, no, a trend about this human right. But this, to be specific, this act, it has too many problems. No, to begin, limits the jurisdiction of the judges. For example, does not allow them, or does not allow them to do justice in criminal cases, in big cases, in murderers. So this is a big contradiction. This is not good, obviously, because as we saw in the Constitution, the human right it permits to do justice to the judges according to the constitutional law. Just the only rule is not to go against other human rights. No, but unfortunately, this is happening. No. Obviously, it can change. That's why it's important to do this kind of research. And I'm going to show you some pictures of my ethnographic work. This is a house, a Mayan house. It's made by wood in Opichen. This is the colonial church in Cocoma. It's from century 18. It's a very pretty one. And this is the one of Mashkanu in century 16. It's older, 200 years older than the other one. And for example, this is what some people from Opichen wrote, no, in the streets, no, or in the walls. Until there is justice for the people, let there be no peace for the government. And that's all. Please do some questions.
Why is it important to do your research with people who speak Mayan? They also speak Spanish?
They also speak Spanish. It's important because one very important part of culture, since the anthropology view, and I think since all social science, is the language. When people start losing their language, they start at some point losing part of their culture. No? So that's why I consider it very important. And obviously, in these municipalities, I can observe. No, I have already observed that the Mayan justice are working. They are really working according to some of their customs. No?
And are the interviews in Spanish or Mayan?
In Spanish.
Okay.
If they don't speak Spanish, I have to hire a Maya translator because unfortunately I don't speak Maya. It's a shame, but I don't.
Okay, thank you.
What else?
What do you think about the rights of the people, the Mayan people,
Mhm.
and their rights in a global world?
Their rights, their human rights. Well, as I showed you in the history, we have seen that these indigenous societies has been, we can say, they have had big conjunctural, big changes in their organization, first with the conquer, with the Spanish conquer, then with the Mexican national state that tries to do this homogenization of the society through the Spanish. It is, as Marta was saying, what happened when the language lost? No, what happened is that the culture starts losing. No, so what do I think? I think that that, like in this case with the Act of 2014, what congressmen should do when they do this kind of laws, this kind of legal things, they should first ask to the real Mayan judges what is happening. No? What I think, just talking about law, no? Since the law discipline, I am sure that now is a good advance that the Mexican Constitution recognizes this human right. But what we have to do, the big problem of the human rights, is how we are going to do them effective, not just to be recognized. And in this case, obviously, it's not being correctly effective. Yes, please.
How do these human rights differ from the basic human rights? Well,
Okay.
the human rights that all.
These human rights, well, I can explain, there are considered 3 generations of human rights. No? The first generation are what people call the basic freedoms. No? The freedom to go wherever you want, the freedom to speak, the freedom to write. No? These basic human rights, you can find it, since talking about history, you can find the basis of them in the Declaration of French of Men, or the Declaration of Men to the French Revolution. Then you have the Bill of Rights of the United States. Then you have other documents. No? Then we have the second generation human rights. In the second generation human rights, we talk more about equality. No? These rights about equality. Everybody have the same right to this, no? And now this third generation human rights are talking more about culture. No? About culture, how to keep, how to preserve these practical social practices. In this case, this is a good example. No? Why do Maya people have to change their way to do justice? It could be even more effective than the official one. So it should be keep it. And now it's a human right, and it should be respected. For example, we have a good example here in America. No? In America, a good example, like I think, no? But for example, here, indigenous people has big autonomy in their territories. They do have this full autonomy. They can have, I know, casinos. They can do whatever they want. But in the other hand, people says that here in America, what the indigenous people, the problem of the indigenous people is that they are in very bad territories, in very bad lands. No? So that's it. So other questions? Wow. I like this.
I understand this act of,
Yes.
it's a bad thing. Is there any movement or something happening to reverse it?
No. Any movement. See?
How Mayan judges are selected?
Well, they should be selected according to their costumes. No? For example, this one that I interviewed, it was selected because, and it's something that the constitutional law, it should be respected like that, but his grandfather was a judge, his father was a judge, so in some moment of the time he had the right to be a judge. No? But the problem is that, talking about this, that for example in the Act of 2014, it says that the Mayan judges has to be, for example, lawyers in big cities, no? And this is not what constitutional law requires, no? That the state is saying what to do. This is not good. Rolando.
My question is like Bruno did. It seems like there is a sort of open contradiction between a new Justice Act and some previous rights recognized. It seems like in the Constitution.
Yes.
So how can people that are affected by this kind of situation, how can them face it? I mean,
this kind of situation.
Yeah, in the terms of the own.
Legally, they have the option of the amparo process. No, here in U.S. it's called the habeas corpus. It's a process in order to protect human rights. No, they can do that. It has happened in Yucatan. Today in the morning I was talking with someone, the case of Monsanto, and some indigenous people do an amparo process and they won against Monsanto, no? Because of the production of corn. No? So legally that's the option. Legally that's the option, definitely. But since the social point of view, what they have to do is keep doing the justice in the ways they do it. No? With the only rule that they should not go against other human rights. No? Why? Because this is recognized now in the Constitution. Okay. Any other question? One more? Okay.
What is your purpose about the constitutional law? It means equality between the people, Mayan people and
What is the purpose?
yes. What will happen with the constitution?
What would happen? Okay. Well, as I understand it now, the human right to equality is not that we are everybody the same. No, the human right to equality is we have the same rights, but we have to understand the differences, circumstances of everybody. That is what is happening now in the Mexican Constitution. It's recognizing new human rights, not the typical ones, not the classic ones, including different situations. No, and this is a case. Here in U.S., there are these cases about positive discrimination that is called. These are policies for example, Afro-American people, more scholarships to them, or also Latinos. No, so this is, since my point of view, is good. It's an advance, no, in the law, the Mexican law. Yes.
Well, your study have some influence in real life.
It has to. That's my obligation. Yes. We cannot do research just for put it in the desk. That's my big critics for those that do research in Mexico, and they are just publishing books. That doesn't help anyway. It's good, but you have to do that. Your research helps in some way. You have to do that.
It has an effect.
It's to be practice, yes. And I hope so. Thank you.